The girl set down the basket filled with fresh herbs, her bright eyes filled with caution as she asked, "Speak, who are you? Why are you in my house?" Seeing Qin Mo staring at her without answering, she reached for a nearby trekking pole, thinking he might be a troublemaker. Qin Mo quickly explained, "Don't be alarmed. I'm here to visit the descendant of the late Hu Tsong, the old Chinese medicine doctor. Are you his granddaughter, Hu Xian?" Upon hearing Qin Mo mention her name, Hu Xian furrowed her brows and became even more vigilant. "Are you a family member of a patient who came to trouble my grandfather? He passed away 5 years ago." Everything should have ended there. Qin Mo was taken aback. It had been 5 years since the old man passed away, and there were still people causing trouble for him? Hu Xian couldn't help but sneer, a flash of anger in her eyes. Isn't it because someone successfully made him pay 80,000 on the first visit? Others naturally followed suit. Isn't it said that harsh environments breed cunning people? Listening to her last words, Qin Mo frowned. He understood her grievances. But her words seemed a bit too generalized, painting everyone in the surrounding villages with the same brush. Noticing that Qin Mo was not there to cause trouble, Hu Xian's tone softened slightly. "My grandfather is gone, and the clinic is closed. What do you want with us?" Qin Mo looked at the basket full of herbs behind her and the dried ones in the yard, puzzled, and asked, "If you're not running a clinic, why are you collecting so many herbs?" The newly gathered basket of herbs was not to be underestimated, and there were even more drying outside. Clearly, one person couldn't use all of these herbs. "We're no longer running a clinic, but that doesn't mean we aren't researching traditional Chinese medicine. I'm a student in the TCM program at the Provincial Capital University, and I'm back during the holidays to process herbs, preparing to sell them in the city to cover my tuition and living expenses." Qin Mo was taken aback again, then smiled. "In that case, you might be interested in what I have to say." He briefly mentioned his plan to open a traditional Chinese medicine wellness center in Qin Family Village and expressed his willingness to offer her a work-study position. "Wait, do you mean for you to temporarily run the TCM clinic?" Hu Xian's eyes widened, her delicate features making her look very cute with such an expression. But she was clearly not being playful. She was questioning Qin Mo. "Don't joke about patients' health. Even naturally grown herbs can't be used recklessly. Moreover, if you delay someone's condition, it could cause them to miss the best treatment opportunity, which could be life-threatening." Hu Xian had been raised by her grandfather and had a deep-rooted sense of responsibility for healing. Although she was unhappy that her grandfather fell ill due to unreasonable patients' families, she still chose to pursue TCM. She wanted to prove through legitimate means that her grandfather's clinic was correct. "It seems you have some misunderstanding about me. Qin Mo's TCM skills were acquired from a system, so it was impossible for him to cause harm. Of course, if you really care about the patients in the surrounding villages, you should join my herbal clinic. At least you can supervise me to ensure no one gets harmed, right? You should know the location of Qin Family Village. If you're interested, come find me. My name is Qin Mo." With that, Qin Mo said no more. Nowadays, Qin Family Village had become a well-known internet celebrity village in the region. Almost everyone knew about it. Qin Mo? Isn't he the one who transformed Qin Family Village and even brought in a proper hospital, networking several chief doctors from the provincial capital? Hu Xian murmured as she watched Qin Mo's departing figure. She had seen speculations and descriptions about him online, but there were no photos of him. Hu Xian never expected that a legendary figure who turned Qin Family Village into a well-known modern internet celebrity village would be a young man almost her age. The online descriptions painted Qin Mo as someone skilled in capital operations and business management, capable of attracting investments for his hometown and turning Qin Family Village into a massive chicken brand. How could someone like that suddenly understand traditional Chinese medicine? "Wait." Hu Xian rushed out, wanting to ask a few more questions. Just then, a new visitor arrived at the wooden house halfway up the mountain. It was a man in a snow-white shirt, panting from the climb, but his eyes lit up upon seeing Hu Xian. "Xiao Xian," he called out, waving. Hu Xian looked up at the sound, but her brow furrowed. "Zhou Tao, what are you doing here?" Hu Xian showed an impatient expression on her face. Qin Mo, who had seen a lot, could tell it was a matter between a man and a woman. He was too lazy to get involved in the flirtations of young people and prepared to leave. However, Hu Xian chased after him again and proactively said, "Wait, Qin Mo, didn't you say you wanted to recruit me to your clinic? I want to see how things are going today." "The clinic isn't built yet. You won't see anything today," Qin Mo replied, fully aware that Hu Xian wanted to provoke the unfamiliar man in front of her. Qin Mo leaned in closer and whispered in Hu Xian's ear, "Classmate, if you have a conflict with your boyfriend, just talk it out. Don't easily drag outsiders in as a shield. It won't end well." Hu Xian paused for a moment and quickly shook her head, saying, "No, we're not in a romantic relationship. He's just a relative of the patient who caused my grandfather's death." "What?" Qin Mo was instantly confused. "Aren't your two families supposed to be at odds? How did you end up interacting?" The story of Romeo and Juliet popped into Qin Mo's mind, and he couldn't help but chuckle. Hu Xian looked at Qin Mo's strange smile, bewildered, but she still explained the whole situation. It turned out that the patient who was treated to death by Hu Xian's grandfather was actually a doctor in the city. It is often said that physicians cannot treat themselves, and this doctor was a well-known elder physician in the area, specializing in liver and gallbladder issues. Unexpectedly, he developed a serious liver disease as he aged. Despite his resources at the hospital, he couldn't find a treatment plan. In the end, suffering from pain, he began to explore various folk remedies. Through a friend's introduction, he got to know Hu Xian's grandfather. Hu Xian's grandfather was indeed skilled. Their family's traditional methods had stood the test of time and cases over several generations. The two hit it off, and the elder physician treated his condition as a last resort, considering it a case for the collaboration of traditional and Western medicine. Unfortunately, the outcome was not successful, and he indeed passed away. However, both parties agreed that there was no blame to assign. But the elder physician's family was relentless afterward and ultimately took Hu Xian's grandfather to court. If it weren't for the support of people from nearby villages vouching for Hu Xian's grandfather's character, he would have faced not only financial compensation but also imprisonment. At that time, the ones insisting on suing Hu Xian's grandfather were the parents of the man in front of her, Zhou Tao. Now, they were also significant figures in the city's hospital, with the father being the head of the medical department and the mother the financial director. This was clearly the child of an enemy, and Qin Mo was even more puzzled as to why Hu Xian would interact with him. Hu Xian also looked impatient, saying, "We only got to know each other because of the grievances between our previous generations. I didn't expect to end up in the same medical school. He insists it's fate and wants to pursue me against societal norms." Qin Mo understood. It was a classic case of self-delusion. Truly seeing oneself as a romantic hero wanting to create a dramatic love story with the descendant of an enemy. It seemed he was really busy helping out. Qin Mo couldn't help but smile wryly at this thought, and said, "Well, get ready. I'll take you to visit our village's traditional Chinese medicine clinic." Okay, Hu Xian readily agreed, putting down the bamboo basket used for collecting herbs, picking up her phone, and preparing to set off with Qin Mo. Zhou Tao, who had observed Qin Mo when he arrived, glanced at him. Seeing Qin Mo dressed in sportswear without even a watch, he didn't take him seriously, thinking he was just a passerby in this mountain village. But now he had to be on guard. "Are you the one running the clinic?" Zhou Tao asked, looking at Qin Mo with hostility. "Is there a problem?" After listening to Hu Xian's introduction, Qin Mo had a general impression of Zhou Tao, realizing that this guy was self-centered, so being polite to him would be pointless. Sure enough, a simple retort from Qin Mo made Zhou Tao bristle with anger. "Heh, opening a clinic in this poor backwater, do you really think you're something?" Zhou Tao mocked, then turned to Hu Xian. "Xianer, if you want to work part-time, you can come to our family's hospital." Hearing Zhou Tao call her Xianer, Hu Xian felt a chill run down her spine. And the second part of his statement was even more outrageous. Her brows furrowed as she replied, "Your parents work at a public hospital. How can it be your family's hospital?" As someone from a family of traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, Hu Xian had always been taught that the highest aspiration was to hope for a world without illness, valuing healing over profit. Listening to Zhou Tao boast about his parents' management position in the hospital made her extremely uncomfortable. Zhou Tao, however, was quite pleased with himself. The old director is about to retire, and my dad will probably be promoted to director. So that hospital is basically my family's, right? He continued excitedly. "As long as you agree to be my girlfriend, once you graduate, you can go to whichever department you want." Hu Xian felt a wave of nausea at this, and was too lazy to argue with Zhou Tao any longer. She turned to Qin Mo and said, "I'm ready. Let's go." "All right." Qin Mo nodded and began walking down the winding mountain path. Both Qin Mo and Hu Xian were local mountain dwellers, so they walked these paths often. Climbing up was not difficult, and now going down felt even easier, as if they were walking on flat ground. Zhou Tao, however, didn't have the same ability. Although he was a medical student, his privileged background had led him to enjoy a life of ease, and his physical activity was far less than that of a typical college student. He had already struggled to climb up, and now, as he descended, his strength quickly waned. His steps grew heavier, and his breathing became labored, with beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "Is your place really that poor? Can't you build a road that cars can use? This path is too hard to walk," Zhou Tao complained, panting heavily. Qin Mo glanced back at him and smiled. "This path is nothing to us mountain folks. But you, look at you. You're really struggling, aren't you? You should have less screen time. You're the one struggling," Zhou Tao retorted, but his face turned red, clearly having been hit by Qin Mo's observation. Hu Xian listened to their exchange, and her dislike for Zhou Tao was evident on her face. Zhou Tao naturally didn't want to embarrass himself in front of Hu Xian, so he gritted his teeth and followed the two. However, his legs felt weak, and after taking a few steps, he suddenly stumbled and fell forward. At that moment, a grandmother with gray hair and a worried expression happened to pass by. Zhou Tao collided directly with her, causing the grandmother to fall to the ground. "Ouch!" she cried out in pain. Zhou Tao himself fell quite hard, and as he got up awkwardly, Instead of apologizing for knocking her down, he angrily shouted, "You old hag. Are you blind? You almost knocked me over." Qin Mo, overhearing Zhou Tao's words, was furious. He stepped forward to push Zhou Tao aside, and then helped the grandmother up, asking with concern, "Grandma, are you okay?" The grandmother winced in pain, but looked more anxious than hurt. Struggling to get up, she grabbed Qin Mo's arm and said, "Young man, do you have a car? My granddaughter Xiaoyan had an accident. She just fell down the mountain and is bleeding a lot. I can't move her. Do you have a car to take her to the hospital?" "What?" Qin Mo and Hu Xian were both shocked. Zhou Tao, who had been pushed aside by Qin Mo, coldly remarked, "How could you bring a child here? There are no hospitals in this remote area. The nearest county is several dozen miles away. If she is really injured internally, I doubt the county hospital can handle it." Hearing Zhou Tao's words, the grandmother started to cry. Hu Xian, having never witnessed such a scene, quickly stepped forward and said, "Grandma, don't worry. I'm studying medicine and can help. Please take me to your granddaughter." The grandmother immediately stood up to leave, but she had been knocked down by Zhou Tao and was limping. Qin Mo stepped forward to carry her on his back and said, "Grandma, just guide me. We need to hurry." With lives at stake, everyone rushed to get moving. At first, Hu Xian was worried that Qin Mo would be slow carrying the grandmother, but after running a few dozen meters, it seemed like he was unaffected. Running ahead with someone on his back, Hu Xian was secretly amazed by Qin Mo's physical strength, while Zhou Tao couldn't help but mutter, "These mountain people are as strong as oxen, running while carrying someone." He was just following behind and was already out of breath, but he considered himself a well-educated person, thinking he was on a different level than someone like Qin Mo who did physical labor. A few minutes later, they spotted a pale-faced girl by the roadside 100 meters away. "That's it. That's my granddaughter," the grandmother exclaimed from Qin Mo's back. The little girl was trying to turn her head to look at her grandmother, but clearly lacked the strength to even call out. Qin Mo quickly squatted down to let the grandmother off his back, while Hu Xian rushed ahead a few steps to check on the little girl's condition. Qin Mo then asked, "Grandma, did you call an ambulance?" "I did, but this place is too remote. The ambulance from the county will take at least half an hour to get here. The car couldn't make it up the road, so we had to wait on the main road," the grandmother anxiously said, nearly in tears. She didn't know if her granddaughter could hold on until the ambulance arrived, nor did she know how to carry her granddaughter to the main road. Just then, the little girl suddenly coughed and spat out a small mouthful of fresh blood. Seeing her granddaughter spit blood again, the grandmother turned pale with fear and cried out, "Xiaoyan, what's wrong? Don't scare Grandma." Hu Xian was beside the little girl, sweating profusely with worry. She had a rough idea of the situation. The little girl had fallen from the mountain path and hit her abdomen against a protruding rock, resulting in severe bruising. While the external injury was a minor issue, it was highly likely that the impact had affected her internal organs. Given the little girl's coughing up blood, it was feared that her internal organs had already been damaged. Internal bleeding. Zhou Tao, who was out of breath from running, caught up at this moment. Although he wasn't focused on his studies, he was still a medical student and widened his eyes at the girl's symptoms. In such a remote area, internal bleeding was not something that could be easily managed. Internal bleeding is an extremely terrifying injury, even if one reaches a hospital. It may not be stopped immediately. Only through blood transfusions could time be bought, allowing the doctors enough time to perform surgery. In such a desolate place, even a miraculous healer would be powerless without a blood bank, merely watching the little girl bleed to death. Hearing Zhou Tao's words, the grandmother's cloudy old eyes filled with tears. "What should I do? My precious granddaughter is only 6 years old." The grandmother lost all her strength and collapsed to the ground. "Zhou Tao, shut up!" Hu Xian shouted angrily, clearly annoyed. She could also see that the little girl's condition was dire, but Zhou Tao's casual remarks were doing nothing but upsetting the grandmother. Zhou Tao's face turned red from Hu Xian's outburst, but he had a thick skin and tried to take this opportunity to show off. "Don't worry, Hu Xian. I studied internal medicine. The situation might not be as bad as it seems. Let me check," he said, although he wasn't very confident and just wanted to impress Hu Xian. Following the habits of internal medicine, Zhou Tao immediately wanted to press on the girl's chest and abdomen to check for abnormalities. "Don't touch her." Qin Mo couldn't help but intervene. Having activated his medical knowledge from the system during the journey, knowing that in such cases, one shouldn't press randomly. Zhou Tao frowned. "What do you mean by that? How can I confirm the problem without doing an examination? Your reckless movements will only harm this little girl." Qin Mo stepped forward to stop him. However, Zhou Tao was quite obstinate, and, before Qin Mo could get close, he gently pressed on the little girl's abdomen, shouting, "What do you know? Just because you sell some herbal medicine in the village doesn't make you a medical expert." Just at that moment, as Zhou Tao pressed down, the little girl's injuries were aggravated, and she spat out another mouthful of blood. "Xiaoyan!" Hu Xian and the grandmother both exclaimed in shock. Qin Mo was furious and rushed forward, kicking Zhou Tao away. "You're just messing around." Zhou Tao was somewhat at a loss beside him. He didn't expect that a gentle touch could lead to an injury. Furious and embarrassed, he retorted, "What do you know? This is not my fault at all. Her injury is so severe that even divine intervention can't save her. I'm just doing my part." Qin Mo was too lazy to waste time with Zhou Tao and crouched down to prepare for rescue. Internal bleeding was indeed a serious injury, and the key to saving her lay in stopping the bleeding. Most Western medicine approaches this through surgery to stitch up internal wounds, which is a fundamental solution. But Qin Mo couldn't possibly perform surgery now. Moreover, with his limited medical knowledge, it would be ridiculous to even consider it. However, Qin Mo not only understood Western medicine, but also had some knowledge of traditional Chinese medicine. When the system initially infused him with comprehensive undergraduate knowledge, it seemed that the standards for traditional Chinese medicine were not judged by modern criteria. Qin Mo knew many techniques that weren't part of the modern Chinese medical system, including a mysterious acupressure technique. Nowadays, dramas portray acupressure as mystical, but it is actually a technique that strikes specific points to stimulate muscles and meridians, causing a series of bodily responses. However, this technique requires a high level of skill and is far less efficient than directly using acupuncture needles, leading to its gradual decline. Qin Mo had never practiced it in real combat and could only rely on improvisation at this moment. He positioned his right hand's index and middle fingers to form a sword-like gesture, searching for the feeling of the technique based on the knowledge imparted by the system. With rapid movements, Qin Mo executed 6 precise strikes in quick succession. He then hurriedly checked the little girl's condition, grabbing her wrist to feel her pulse. Acupressure? Nonsense. Did he really think he was some martial arts master? Zhou Tao observed Qin Mo's actions, sneering immediately. But unexpectedly, the little girl's condition stabilized significantly after Qin Mo's acupressure. The pallor of her face regained some color, clearly indicating that the internal bleeding had temporarily stopped. "Grandma, it hurts." The little girl, regaining some strength, cried out in pain. "Xiaoyan." The grandmother rushed forward upon hearing her call, grasping her granddaughter's hand, wanting to help her up. "Don't move her." Qin Mo spoke up again, stopping the grandmother. Having witnessed Qin Mo's skills, she quickly nodded, saying, "I won't move her." "How is my granddaughter? Is she going to be okay?" "It seems the spleen was slightly torn due to the violent impact. I just helped her temporarily stop the bleeding. If you move her, the abdominal cavity will be compressed again, and she might vomit blood like before." The earlier incident referred to Zhou Tao's reckless pressing. Hearing this, both the grandmother and Hu Xian glared angrily at Zhou Tao. According to Qin Mo, Zhou Tao was not saving her, but actually harming her. Zhou Tao realized he had made a fool of himself. His face flushed red. He wanted to argue but didn't know what to say, feeling both anxious and angry. The grandmother glared at Zhou Tao for a long time before turning back to Qin Mo, gratefully saying, "Thank you. I really appreciate it." Coincidentally, the knowledge he had learned was coming in handy, but Xiaoyan's condition was still critical. They couldn't afford to be careless until they reached the hospital. Qin Mo checked the little girl's pulse. His acupressure technique could only reduce the amount of bleeding, but the internal wounds were still oozing blood every second. To truly treat this, she needed to undergo surgery at a large hospital to stitch up the wounds. However, it seemed manageable to hold on until the ambulance arrived. Chapter 251. Selecting the village chief. After confirming that the little girl's condition was stable for a while, Qin Mo lifted his head and said to Hu Xian, "Go back and get a blanket from your home. I'll carry Xiaoyan down to the main road to wait for the ambulance." Having witnessed Qin Mo's technique, Hu Xian was filled with curiosity and astonishment. Hearing his instructions, though she didn't fully understand the purpose, she instinctively nodded like a little chick and hurried back to her home to fetch the blanket. Qin Mo took the blanket, folded it into 2 loose and thick layers, placed it under the little girl, and then picked her up. Hu Xian realized that Qin Mo intended to use the blanket as a cushion, otherwise, the bumpy descent could worsen the little girl's injuries. Thinking of this, Hu Xian quickly stepped forward, wanting to help carry the girl down the mountain. But Qin Mo shook his head. "No need for assistance. I'm more stable alone." "Are you sure you can manage?" Hu Xian couldn't help but ask. The area was extremely remote, and the mountain path lacked proper steps, making it inevitable to jolt during the descent. Given the severity of the little girl's injuries, even a small mistake could exacerbate the internal bleeding, potentially leading to a larger wound that would be beyond saving. Qin Mo remained silent and started walking ahead with the little girl in his arms. The elderly woman and Hu Xian followed closely behind, both looking anxious and reminding Qin Mo to watch out for branches and stones on the ground. However, Qin Mo's physical ability clearly exceeded their expectations. His steps were remarkably steady, and his arms, holding the little girl, didn't shake at all, with the blanket providing cushioning. The minor ups and downs of his steps were barely noticeable and wouldn't affect the girl's condition. "The young man has great stamina. Thank you so much." The elderly woman sighed in relief. Meanwhile, Hu Xian was secretly astonished. She had to walk this mountain path several times whenever she returned home, and even then, She needed to stop and catch her breath if she hurried. This wasn't just a matter of stamina. The path was too rough. It was normal for anyone to sweat profusely after running 1,000 meters, and it was a natural bodily response. In Hu Xian's view, Qin Mo's physical capabilities were somewhat beyond reason. However, this wasn't the time to dwell on such thoughts. With Qin Mo, who had been enhanced by the system, everyone smoothly arrived at the main road. The ambulance arrived shortly after, and the medical staff rushed over with a stretcher. Hu Xian greeted them and explained the situation. Internal bleeding? The medical staff on the ambulance were taken aback, but they trusted Hu Xian's words since she was a medical student. However, although they had emergency blood bags on board, they had no idea about the little girl's blood type. While the medical staff were nervously scrambling, Hu Xian added, "Everyone, don't panic. The internal bleeding has temporarily stopped. As long as we get her to the hospital safely, she should be fine." Stopped? But that's internal bleeding. How did you manage to stop it? The medical staff exclaimed in surprise. Hu Xian was momentarily at a loss for how to explain Qin Mo's outrageous acupoint technique, which was completely beyond the realm of modern medicine. Fortunately, the medical staff knew that time was of the essence. Stopping the internal bleeding equated to saving a life. They immediately took over, placing the little girl on a stretcher and loading her into the ambulance. The elderly grandmother also went to the hospital with them. Before parting, she hurried to Qin Mo and earnestly asked, "Young man, you are my granddaughter's lifesaver. I need to know your name so that I can tell Xiaoyan who saved her life." Qin Mo smiled and shook his head, saying, "There's no need for that, Grandma. Saving a life is more valuable than building a pagoda. Anyone would help if they could." The grandmother shook her head as well, looking firmly at Qin Mo. In her heart, being grateful and repaying kindness was something everyone should do. Qin Mo, feeling a bit embarrassed under her gaze, scratched his head and said, "My name is Qin Mo, from Qin Family Village." "I'll remember the name Qin Mo from Qin Family Village," the grandmother replied, and she was about to bow in thanks. Qin Mo quickly stopped her, saying, "Grandma, you should hurry and follow the ambulance to the hospital with the little girl." Yes, once Xiaoyan is better. "We'll come to thank you properly," the grandmother responded. After watching the ambulance drive away safely, both Qin Mo and Hu Xian let out a sigh of relief. As for Zhou Tao, he had already lost face and slipped away when the ambulance arrived. Qin Mo noticed this and said to Hu Xian, "Well, that annoying Zhou Tao has left. The medical clinic in Qin Family Village hadn't opened yet, and would likely take a few more days to get ready. If you want to come work, just find me in Qin Family Village when the time comes." Qin Mo's goal for today was to provide Hu Xian with a part-time job opportunity, and now that the task was complete, it didn't matter whether Hu Xian came or not. The respect for the old doctor from years ago had been delivered. In the following days, Qin Mo was busy preparing for the Chinese medicine clinic. The building was ready, and he secured a storefront on the newly constructed Jadestone Street. Many shops had already opened there, selling jade, antiques, and old coins, along with several food establishments. Wealthy Qin Mo had only one requirement for them. They had to serve traditional cuisine made with ancient recipes. Those who met the criteria would enjoy 6 months of free rent. This policy immediately attracted many traditional food artisans from the area. Qin Mo also planned for returns by having Lu Xian and other streamers shoot promotional videos online. Qin Family Village already had many attractive projects, such as its gardens and rural scenery, and now with the food initiative, it naturally drew more young people. The older generation accompanying the youth was attracted by the vintage movie themes, grand theaters, and quaint shops on the ancient street. Today, Qin Family Village had become a natural haven for workers from the provincial capital, a great weekend destination for nearby cities, appealing to both young and old. Alright, once the various herbs arrive tomorrow, the clinic can officially open, Qin Mo said as he tidied up the store, preparing for the opening. Just then, a phone call came in. Qin Mo picked up the phone and saw it was Uncle Qin Guofu, quickly answering, "Uncle Guofu, is there something you need?" When Qin Mo was building his house, the original residents of Qin Village were all together. Usually, if there wasn't anything urgent, the villagers would just walk over to Qin Mo's house in the evening, and it was rare for them to make a phone call. Yes, hearing Qin Mo's question, Uncle Guofu simply explained the situation. Selecting a village head? Qin Mo breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this. At least it wasn't a matter of an elder's health. However, coming back to his senses, Qin Mo's tone was filled with confusion. "Uncle Guofu, you've always been the village secretary. Why do we need to select a village head? Has something changed?" Qin Mo had an uneasy feeling and proactively asked again. Chapter 252, The New Village Secretary. In fact, the position of village secretary held by Qin Guofu is administratively ranked even higher than that of a village head. It had been a long time since there was a village head in Qin Village. Qin Guofu, the village secretary, was the only one in the village, and he had previously also served as the village head. Most of the other members of the village committee were just helping out without any real official positions. On the other end of the phone, Qin Guofu sighed and said, "Isn't it because I am being removed as the village secretary?" "Qin Mo, where are you? Come to the activity center. Everyone is discussing this matter. Qin Mo vaguely heard the voices of the elderly discussing on the other end of the line and nodded in response. All right, I'll be right there. A few minutes later, Qin Mo arrived at the activity center. The elderly were indeed all there, chattering away. From a distance, Qin Mo could see the apparent anger on the faces of the elderly. Qin Mo, you finally made it. Quickly, help calm everyone down, Qin Guofu exclaimed, as if he had seen a savior, and hurriedly called him over. As soon as Qin Mo got closer, Qin Huai approached him, indignantly complaining, Xiao Mo, you came just in time. The county is sending someone from outside to be the village secretary. What do you think about this? When have we ever let outsiders decide matters in Qin Village? Exactly. How can someone sent from outside understand the ins and outs of our village? If they mess things up, our good days will be over, the second grandmother chimed in. Upon hearing this, Qin Mo furrowed his brows. The grassroots democracy in Qin Village had lasted for decades in this mountainous area. Although nominally the county government oversaw Secretary Qin Guofu, it had indeed not interfered much in the affairs of Qin Village over the years. However, Qin Mo also understood that times had changed. Now, Qin Village not only had high-rise buildings, but the chicken processing factory was also remarkable. Since defeating their biggest competitor, the Endless Group, Qin Village's chicken brand had surged, with sales exceeding 1 billion. Even with just a thin profit margin, that was still over 100 million in profit. In this mountainous region, an annual profit of over 100 million was enough to cover the entire county government's annual revenue, not to mention the various interests involved in the billion-dollar industry. In the face of such enormous benefits, this situation could have been anticipated. Qin Mo remained silent for a moment, having roughly figured it out. With such a massive industry and an influx of so many people in Qin Village, in Qin Family Village, the population and economy are more than double that of other villages combined. With such a significant number of people and interests, it would be strange if the local authorities did not intervene. However, Qin Mo understands the concerns of the elderly. No one is pleased to have an outsider suddenly come in and take charge. Just as Qin Mo was about to speak, the door of the activity center was suddenly pushed open. A man in a sharp suit and gold-rimmed glasses walked in, followed by several staff members, exuding a strong presence. Dear villagers, I am here as the newly appointed village secretary for Qin Family Village. My name is Zhao Yu. I was supposed to start next week, but I decided to come a few days early to communicate with everyone before officially taking office. The man introduced himself. Although his tone was sincere, it couldn't hide a sense of superiority, making him seem disconnected from the locals. The elderly listened, feeling uncomfortable, and someone quietly exclaimed, an outsider as village secretary? We don't welcome this. Zhao Yu's expression shifted slightly as he scanned the crowd, but noticing it was mostly elderly people who were hard to hold accountable, he forced a calm demeanor and said, please don't be agitated. I am here to lead Qin Family Village towards better development. I am a graduate student familiar with advanced rural governance and renewal concepts, and I am confident I can elevate Qin Family Village to new heights. I have already taken a drive around the village, and the infrastructure here is quite solid. I am confident that within 5 years, Qin Family Village will become a benchmark in our county. With a beaming smile, Zhao Yu was genuinely pleased with the village's infrastructure, viewing it as a fertile ground for his political achievements, which would pave the way for his rise to wealth and power in larger cities. Standing to the side, Qin Mo noticed Zhao Yu's ambition but felt a sense of unease. He rose, took a few steps forward, and said to Zhao Yu, Mr. Zhao, our Qin Family Village has its own pace and traditions. An external management approach could disrupt the harmony within our village. What exactly is the county government planning? Hearing this, Zhao Yu couldn't help but feel a twinge of hostility. He turned to Qin Mo with a frown and asked, excuse me, may I know who you are? I'm just an ordinary villager, Qin Mo replied casually. Zhao Yu glanced at Qin Mo with a hint of disdain and smiled, saying, ah, an ordinary villager. I understand your concerns. However, times are changing. Although Qin Family Village has developed due to good fortune in attracting foreign investment, clinging to old ways will make it hard to progress further. The county's plan for Qin Family Village is to accelerate development with the help of foreign investment. We intend to demolish some of the old buildings to create a modern tourist area and develop an industrial zone around the poultry factory to attract more investment. This is the way to draw more tourists and investments, thereby boosting the village's economy. Upon hearing this, Qin Tianrui, who was beside them, could no longer sit still. Qin Mo hurried to complete the foundation of the various large projects before the elderly returned from their trip abroad, in order not to disturb their lives. Now that Zhao Yu has arrived, he is ready to make significant changes, which would disrupt the peaceful lives of the elderly. This is just part of the problem. The more critical issue is that Qin Family Village is a mountainous area with limited land resources suitable for construction. Zhao Yu wants to build so many new things that it will inevitably require tearing down the old buildings, which Qin Mo had deliberately preserved. Qin Huai immediately stood up to oppose this, stating that the old houses had been passed down through generations and were their roots and memories, and should not be casually altered. Zhao Yu furrowed his brow and replied, "How can we develop without modifications? Aren't you all living in new houses now? What is the point of keeping those empty old houses?" Qin Wu also jumped up, declaring, "We can choose where we want to live. That's our freedom. If you want to demolish my ancestral home, I will fight you to the end." His old house was built with stones gathered from the back mountain and yellow mud from the river, a labor of love that had withstood nearly a century. It could not fall into ruin under his watch. Chapter 253, Rebellion or Resistance. Other elderly residents shared his sentiments, ready to take up brooms and pitchforks to drive the intruders away. Zhao Yu, a well-educated young man who had just entered public service, had never encountered such a scene and was frightened enough to hide behind his driver and assistant. The assistant, equally scared, exclaimed, "We are here on behalf of the county government. Are you planning to rebel?" The situation became tense, and seeing this, Qin Mo quickly stepped forward to calm everyone down. "Please don't be agitated. Let us discuss this matter thoroughly." He then turned to Zhao Yu, speaking in a calm yet firm tone. "Mr. Zhao, how about this? You go back and rest for now. I will visit the county government tomorrow to discuss our village's situation and thoughts in detail, and we can find a solution together." Seeing that Qin Mo was providing a way out, Zhao Yu readily agreed and nodded, hurriedly leaving the activity center with his people. After Zhao Yu and the others left, Qin Mo turned to Qin Guofu and several elders, saying solemnly, "Uncle Guofu, everyone, it seems this matter is not so simple. I will go to the county government tomorrow to understand the situation better and see if we can find a mutually beneficial solution." Qin Guofu sighed and patted Qin Mo's shoulder, saying, "It seems we have no choice. Qin Mo, our village relies on you." The next morning, Qin Mo drove to the county government. After gathering information, he learned that Zhao Yu had some connections, and the city government's directive had already been issued, making non-compliance impossible. The county leaders also appeared helpless and finally offered a suggestion. The village head is elected democratically, and it's difficult for anyone to interfere with your village's establishment of a village committee. If you can be elected as village head, although nominally still under the village secretary's management, at least you could balance Zhao Yu's influence and prevent him from acting recklessly. Qin Mo was taken aback. Wasn't this essentially setting him up to establish a committee and a party to oppose Zhao Yu? This was no different from rebellion at its core. However, it seems there is no other way at the moment. Otherwise, Zhao Yu's decisions would go unchallenged. After Qin Mo left, the county leader smiled, and the old secretary beside him looked in the direction where Qin Mo had departed. Once he confirmed that the person was gone, he cautiously asked, "Leader, is it really necessary to push him this hard?" The county leader smiled meaningfully and replied, "What do you understand? This is a good opportunity to achieve two goals with one action. Qin Family Village has already become the face of our county. Managing it well will ensure our county's development. But if Qin Mo doesn't take charge, who can? I'm just trying to motivate him to become the leader of our Qin Family Village's development." On his way back to the village, Qin Mo was also pondering over this matter. Although he had helped introduce foreign investment to Qin Family Village and generated considerable tax revenue for the county, the awareness of the county leaders couldn't be that low to encourage him to create conflict in the village for such trivial gains. This situation, while not huge, bore a resemblance to rebellion. However, it was inevitable. Qin Mo gathered everyone to discuss restructuring the village committee. "All right, let's reorganize the village committee to oppose him. If he wants to go east, we'll go west. I wonder what kind of chaos a lone commander like him can stir up in our Qin Family Village." Exactly. Qin Family Village belongs to us, and it's not up to an outsider to dictate terms. Qin Mo, you take the lead. We will definitely vote for you to become the new village head. The elderly residents were enthusiastic upon hearing Qin Mo's plan to restructure the village committee. Qin Mo was both amused and helpless, explaining, "We're not really rebelling. We just understand the situation in Qin Family Village better and can't let unfamiliar outsiders disrupt it." In a united atmosphere against a common foe, the restructuring of the new village committee progressed rapidly. Everyone worked together, and before Zhao Yu officially took office in the village branch a week later, all preparations were successfully completed. On that day, sunlight poured into the village committee courtyard, and Qin Mo and others stood ready, quietly waiting for Zhao Yu to take office. To their surprise, he was accompanied by Song Qingfeng. As soon as Song Qingfeng stepped through the village committee's door, his eyes darted around, glancing at Qin Mo with a helpless yet forced smile, while also trying to maintain a cheerful demeanor for Zhao Yu, making the situation quite awkward. Qin Mo was puzzled, his brows furrowing in confusion. Why are these two together? Zhao Yu, on the other hand, appeared quite arrogant and took the initiative to say, "You're all here just in time. I've already discussed with Boss Song that some projects in Qin Family Village need to be modified. While there's still time, we need to expand the construction scope and deepen the foundation. I must turn Qin Family Village into my showcase project. Qin Mo did not confront him directly, but stepped forward and calmly said, Secretary Zhao, where will the funds for these additional projects come from? We need to clarify the accounts first. Zhao Yu scoffed dismissively and replied, funds? The chicken processing plant in Qin Family Village makes so much money every year. Isn't that already available funding? Qin Mo continued to respond calmly. That's the company's money, not the village's. The funds of a business have their specific purposes and cannot be casually misappropriated. Zhao Yu, feeling dissatisfied, raised his voice. Then how were so many things built in the village before? Isn't it all about having money to get things done? Qin Mo replied calmly. That was the reinvestment of profits from foreign investors. Secretary Zhao, you may think that our Qin Family Village seems to lack nothing now, but in reality, the biggest debt is owed to that foreign investor. We cannot disregard their money. The land in the village is mortgaged to the company as fixed assets, and the profits generated must be returned to that foreign investor. Qin Mo had already pondered over this reasoning repeatedly in the past few days and had prepared it thoroughly. Fortunately, he had initially created an identity as a foreign investor to impress the elderly villagers. This identity was designed through overseas company shares rewarded by the system, which was flawless and could not be traced back to any issues with Qin Mo. Now, facing the new village secretary Zhao Yu, Qin Mo used this identity to exert some influence. Upon hearing about the foreign investor, Zhao Yu's previously high and mighty demeanor noticeably softened. He was not foolish. He understood that the rapid development of Qin Family Village in the past 2 years was largely due to that mysterious foreign investor. Without the capital and connections of that foreign investor, who could possibly build a hydroelectric plant and roads in this remote village? Without such infrastructure, the chicken processing factory would not exist, which is a realistic reason for the difficulties in the village's development. Chapter 254. Recommendation from leadership. Zhao Yu's eyes shifted as he said, arrange for me to meet that foreign investor. Investment, after all, is about making money. My planning can significantly improve his return on investment, and he will surely agree. We can make money together. Isn't that a good thing? Qin Mo secretly laughed in his heart, but maintained a composed expression, saying, I haven't actually met that foreign investor, but I can give you his contact information. You can reach out to him yourself. Zhao Yu was taken aback. He had heard about Qin Mo organizing the reconstruction of the village committee before coming here. Initially, he thought Qin Mo was preparing to oppose him, but it seemed now that he wanted to cooperate. Zhao Yu was quite pleased with Qin Mo's savvy and couldn't help but smile. That evening, Qin Mo transformed back into the identity of a foreign investor. Sitting in front of the computer, responding to a series of questions from Zhao Yu via email, clearly stating that Qin Mo would represent Qin Family Village. After sending the email, Qin Mo let out a long sigh, leaning back in his chair, muttering to himself, at least for a short while. Zhao Yu won't be able to initiate those new projects, but this is ultimately not a long-term solution. After all, the other party has a leadership position looming over me. I can't delay forever, and they will inevitably become impatient and press harder. Just then, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was the parents of the little girl Qin Mo had saved earlier. They had somehow learned about Qin Mo's identity and arrived driving a government-registered vehicle, making quite a commotion that caught the attention of the village secretary, Zhao Yu. Upon hearing the news, Zhao Yu hurried to the activity center. As soon as he entered, Zhao Yu saw Qin Mo engaged in a friendly conversation with a man who looked like a leader. He cast a glance at the man and felt a sudden jolt in his heart. Zhao Yu recognized him as the interviewer from his civil service exam. Later, he learned that this man was a leader from the city, a truly significant figure. He quickly put on a smiling face and asked, Li, what brings you here? The man looked up, his eyes carrying an authoritative presence without anger. He glanced at Zhao Yu, recalling the young man, and asked Zhao, I remember you were with a city agency. What brings you here? Seeing that the man recognized him, Zhao Yu excitedly smiled and replied, You still remember me, leader. I worked in the city for half a year, and there was an opportunity to recruit village officials, so I worked hard to come to Qinjia village. Leader, what brings you here? Zhao Yu asked while casting a sidelong glance at Qin Mo, feeling puzzled. In his understanding, how could a villager like Qin Mo know a leader from the city? This was entirely beyond his comprehension. The leader understood Zhao Yu's confusion and explained with a smile. Qin Mo is the lifesaver of my daughter. I'm not here for any official business, just to thank him. Oh, I see. Then you two continue your conversation. Zhao Yu felt a wave of unease rise again in his heart, but it was not appropriate to interrupt, so he decided to leave. The man, having held a high position for many years, naturally noticed Zhao Yu's unusual reaction. After Zhao Yu left, he proactively asked Qin Mo, what's going on? Do you have a conflict with this Zhao? There are some conflicts. Qin Mo thought for a moment and decided to explain everything. The city leader listened and smiled slightly, saying, I can understand Zhao Yu's perspective. Young people always want to achieve something. And according to what you said, your village secretary, Qin Guofu, is indeed of retirement age. Appointing a new village secretary is reasonable, and Zhao Yu's intentions are to help Qinjia village develop. So he isn't doing anything wrong. Qin Mo understood that Zhao Yu was not a bad person, but when an outsider suddenly comes in and starts directing things, the original members of the family will inevitably feel uncomfortable. I have an inappropriate question to ask, leader. Qin Mo decided to be direct and asked, could you help me by transferring him to another position? Ever since Zhao Yu arrived, many things in the village have become chaotic, and everyone is feeling uneasy. The leader listened with interest and smiled. He looked at Qin Mo seriously and replied, I do have the ability to transfer him. My daughter owes you a life, and I should repay that favor. But the problem is, your village cannot be without a village secretary. Are you planning to let Uncle Guofu take over again? Even if he can take over, how many more years can he serve? The man, with his broader perspective, quickly pinpointed the key issue. Although Qin Guofu was younger than the second aunt and the third uncle, he was still nearly 60 years old. In the past, when there were no significant issues in Qinjiao village, he could manage the position of village secretary, but now, the life in Qinjiao village is thriving now. With an increasing population and a growing economy, the energy and insight of Qin Guofu are, to put it bluntly, somewhat insufficient. There are many new things and policies in the village that he finds difficult to comprehend, let alone lead everyone to further development. Qin Mo is vaguely aware of this, but he hasn't given it much thought until his leader asked him a question, prompting him to start thinking seriously. The leader clearly has a good impression of Qin Mo and continued with a smile. Let me rephrase the question. If you are not satisfied with Zhao Yu, who would you prefer as the village secretary? You need to find someone who can truly think for the village and has the ability to lead everyone in development. Qin Mo scratched his head and replied, I really don't have anyone in mind at the moment. I actually have a candidate, the leader said with a smile, looking at Qin Mo with a meaningful gaze. Who? Qin Mo instinctively asked, but upon seeing the leader's expression, he quickly realized. Me? Qin Mo was momentarily taken aback, unable to believe his ears. Isn't it you? The leader smiled, took out a blank sheet of paper from his briefcase, and quickly wrote a letter in neat handwriting, carefully sealing it with his personal stamp. After completing this, he handed the letter to Qin Mo. I've secretly looked into your situation and know that you meet the qualifications to run for village secretary. This is a recommendation letter I've written for you. Think about it. And if you're interested, you can submit it to the county. The election for the village secretary is not particularly complicated. It's part of grassroots democracy, similar to electing a village head. However, the position of village secretary is neither too big nor too small. After all, it's a party position that must follow certain procedures. This includes recommendations from others. Writing this recommendation letter as a male figure is essentially giving Qin Mo silent support, which is half the battle won. The remaining half of the election matters is up to Qin Mo himself. In fact, he does meet the qualifications, as he has the necessary grassroots support, party membership experience, and work capability. Think it over carefully, the man instructed before hurrying back to the city to handle official business. Qin Mo was left alone, contemplating the possibilities of this matter. After some research, he realized that this could indeed be a reliable and feasible solution to the current troubles. Perhaps even the only reasonable one. Qin Mo knows how much he has contributed to Qinjia village over the years, and the villagers recognize it. Moreover, he has the ability and ideas, and he is well acquainted with the village's situation. If he can become the village secretary, he would certainly be hundreds of times more popular than Zhao Yu. Also, once he takes up this official position, his plans would not be undermined, allowing him to rightfully give back to his fellow villagers. Thus, Qin Mo went to the county to discuss this matter with the county leaders. Running for village secretary? The county leaders looked at Qin Mo with some surprise. I have grassroots support, work capability, and my age and health are suitable. Plus, I joined the party nearly 10 years ago, Qin Mo confidently stated. There's no need to mention the grassroots support, who in Qinjia village doesn't respect Qin Mo. In the village, no matter how big or small the issues are, as long as Qin Mo is involved, there is no problem that cannot be solved. His work capability is undeniable. The chicken brand of Qin Family Village and its reputation as an internet-famous village were both elevated by Qin Mo. He led the villagers in developing breeding and tourism, transforming the formerly impoverished and backward Qin Family Village into a well-known and prosperous village. More importantly, Qin Mo holds a recommendation letter from city leaders. After contemplating the letter, the county leaders said, I'll consider this carefully. This matter has to go through the proper channels. But given the current situation, you are indeed a suitable candidate. However, Zhao Yu's appointment is already in place, which complicates things. While saying this, the county leader was secretly pleased. He had previously encouraged Qin Mo to run for village chief with this intention in mind. The development of Qin Family Village had been remarkable, and as long as Qin Mo was willing to continue leading, the village's progress would only improve. As a county leader, if the village thrived, his own standing would benefit as well. This is what one could call the wisdom of gaining without cost. So while he spoke of complications, Once Qin Imo left, he immediately had his secretary help push the process forward. Although Zhao Yu had connections, those connections would vanish when faced with the recommendation letter brought by Qin Imo. Could Qin Imo really obtain a letter from Secretary Li? The old secretary was startled when he came to receive the letter. What's more, Qin Imo could also attract foreign investors and bring in experts in water conservancy and electricity from the city, even getting prestigious schools to open branches in Qin Family Village. The county leader was no stranger to such matters. He didn't need to care where Qin Imo's abilities came from. He just knew that Qin Family Village was part of his county, with so much hidden support. It wasn't long before the village began to promote the village chief election. When Zhao Yu heard this news, he was completely bewildered, and the driver and secretary who came with him exchanged confused glances. How could someone run against him now that the appointment letter had already been issued? However, the election notification soon appeared on the village bulletin board, stamped with various seals. Businesses in Qin Family Village, past tourists, and the villagers could all see this announcement. The boss wants to run for village chief? Originally, there weren't many party members in Qin Family Village, and they didn't even know who to vote for in the election. But within the village enterprises, Qin Imo had recruited many recent graduates, and more than half of those university students had joined the party, which was how Qin Imo also became a party member. Previously, he hadn't expected it to be of much use, but now, running for village chief, he even had the qualifications of a 10-year party member. Who was Zhao Yu? Competing against the boss? Who cares who he is? The votes would definitely go to the boss. The enterprises in Qin Family Village truly respected Qin Imo previously. Many thought he was just a local agent chosen by foreign investors, holding the title of acting chairman without actually doing anything. However, after the lawsuit with Endless Group, everyone's perception of Qin Imo changed. At that time, when people were anxious and a small village enterprise faced a giant like Endless Group, even the executives were considering alternative routes. Qin Imo decisively took on the lawsuit and turned the situation around spectacularly. That kind of determination is certainly not something an inexperienced person could possess. Qin Imo is now the backbone of the Qin Family Village enterprise, giving off an aura of a strategic mastermind operating behind the scenes. With a capable leader, both the village and the enterprise are bound to prosper. However, our household registration is from another place. Can we vote in this election? Why not? Aren't we affiliated with the party branch of the Qin Family Village enterprise? If it really doesn't work, can we move our registration here? That's right. The boss previously mentioned that one can only relocate their household registration to Qin Family Village after 5 years of service. Now that the boss is facing difficulties, isn't moving our registration here a win-win situation? The greatest benefit of having a household registration in Qin Family Village is the future residential buildings that will be constructed. If they can register here, with the employee discounts, plus the discounts for villagers and the interest-free loans provided by the company, it would be almost like getting a house for free. Soon, the anonymous voting by the village party branch commenced. Qin Imo won the position of village secretary with an overwhelming advantage, without any suspense. Upon hearing this news, Zhao Yu was distraught. He had thought that by leveraging his father's connections to be demoted to a village official, it would be a great opportunity to achieve political success. But now that opportunity had slipped away before he could even settle in. However, not many in Qin Family Village cared about his existence. Once they learned that Qin Imo had been elected, every household in the village celebrated as if it were New Year, hanging up red lanterns and decorations. The Qin Family Village enterprise even gave a half-day holiday, and all the villagers and employees gathered at the large square at the village entrance to listen to Qin Mo's inauguration speech. Standing on the stage, Qin Imo felt an indescribable sense of emotion. Initially, he had merely gained a system to give back to his fellow villagers while earning some rewards for himself. He never expected that he would truly become the leader of Qin Family Village. As he looked at the elderly villagers and the young employees filled with anticipation, he felt a greater sense of mission. I don't have much to say, since I am the village secretary. I will pass the position of acting chairman of the Qin Family Village to Qin Tianrui. As for me, I will focus on the planning of Qin Family Village. Our good days have just begun, and there is still a long road ahead. Let's work together to give back to our hometown. The end.